Anna Facchini. I am a doctor and I am currently working at the Burlo Garofalo of Hospital of Trieste, where over the last year and a half I've been in charge of a project about POTS and White-Sutton syndrome. This is not working. Sorry, how do I move to the next slide? Can I do it from the laptop? Okay, no. Okay, so actually the project started at the beginning of 2021 with a proposal of a drug repositioning clinical trial for perampanel, which is an anti-epileptic medication, to treat some of the behavioral symptoms of the syndrome. And with the launch of the study, a call for collaboration was open in order to find eligible patients to enroll in the trial. And on a national level, this eventually allowed us to collect a larger number of patients, so those who met the enrollment criteria and those who did not, and therefore to create the first Italian cohort of affected patients. So my presentation today will be about these two main aspects. In the first part, I will briefly describe the group of 19 patients, while in the second one, I will focus on the clinical trial, so with the rationale of the study and our very first results. So I know many of you know White-Sutton syndrome very, very well, but for those who are new to it, too much. Those who are new to it, White-Sutton syndrome is a rare neurodevelopmental disorder caused by heterozygous mutations in POGZ, which is a gene located on the long arm of human chromosome 1, encoding for a protein with a key role in mitotic progression and gene expression, especially during embryonic neurogenesis, as we just heard. As a matter of fact, main manifestations of the syndrome are neurodevelopmental delay, often with an intellectual disability of variable severity, and behavioral disorders, including autism spectrum disorders. However, the phenotype could be quite heterogeneous and potentially involve all systems, so both morphologically and functionally. So those signs and symptoms listed here are just few of the most frequent findings. So as I mentioned, the study started thanks to the collaboration between 8 different Italian centers, which allowed us to collect a total of 19 subjects, including an affected family of a mother and her 2 children. And our more or less detailed report of each patient was provided by the referring clinicians, and then data were entered into a common database so that we could analyze them like more easily and homogeneously. So this table summarizes the main clinical aspects of our cohort, and consistent with what we said before, the neurodevelopmental and behavioral issues are mainstays of the syndrome, followed in our cohort by strabismus and refraction defects and facial dysmorphic characteristics, which are, however, quite heterogeneous and non-specific. We went through the revision of the literature and could confirm that our data are quite in line with those reported worldwide, and especially in terms of both in terms of the districts that are involved and the heterogeneity of the manifestations, but also for their frequency. And however, we noted a remarkably higher number of patients with overweight and obesity, and a slightly higher number of congenital malformations and electroencephalographic abnormalities, which lead us to stress the importance for a nutritional support, but also an instrumental screening for encephalic, renal, and cardiac malformation at the moment of the diagnosis. From the molecular point of view, data were mainly obtained by intra-OS analysis. And here you can see the location of our mutations on the cDNA, so the blue boxes on the top, representing the exons of the gene, and their respective predicted location on the protein. So you can see the protein structure on the bottom. So we collected a total of 15 different variants, including 2 nonsense, 3 splicing, 6 frame shift, 3 missense, and 1 in-frame deletion. And in addition to this, we report on 2 large deletions encompassing part or whole of the gene. And regarding inheritance, as we expected, the majority of mutations occurred as de novo pathogenic variants. But however, we noted that a high number of familial cases with almost, well, with 1/4 of mutation for which the mechanism of occurrence could be studied being inherited for a parent. Then we conducted a very preliminary analysis on the genotype-phenotype correlation, basing on the type of the mutations and their localization on the protein, both in terms of the domains that are involved and also considering larger regions, so proximal or terminal region part of the protein. And for nonsense and frame shift variants, we also considered the possibility that they escaped the nonsense-mediated RNA decay mechanism. However, we could not find any statistically significant result for now. So switching to the second part of my presentation about the clinical trial for perampanel. Perampanel is an anti-epileptic medication approved by FDA and EMA back in 2012 and used as an adjunctive therapy for pharmacoresistant epilepsy, as it acts as antagonist of glutamate receptors in excitatory synapses of the central nervous system. And its role in controlling some of the behavioral issues, such as anxiety, sleep disorders, or personality change that are often present as comorbidities to epilepsy, has been investigated by several studies. And specifically considering POC, an interesting study is that of the Japanese team of Matsumura, which demonstrated that the social impairment symptoms present in POC knockdown mice are caused by an hyperactivity of cortical excitatory neurons, and that such behavioral phenotype were reversible with minimal dosage of perampanel. So this is a very schematic view of our study design. And patients who meet the enrollment criteria, among others, about the age and the severity of intellectual disability and the absence of course, epilepsy or any concomitant treatment for it. So patients are extensively evaluated at the beginning of the study through clinical and instrumental assessment, and through a complete neuropsychiatric assessment in investigating on the cognitive and language and motor and behavioral aspects, with particular attention to the latter, as that's where we expect the most of the changes during the therapy. So patients then start the therapy with a minimal dosage of perampanel, and then two adaptive and behavioral tests that are the Vineland scales and the child behavior checklist are again proposed to parents every 6 months. And basing on the results of these two tests, the patient continued with the same dose of perampanel or double it to 8 milligrams a day. So that after 12 months of therapy with the most appropriate dosage, the patient undergoes a complete neuropsychiatric assessment again, and the study can be considered concluded. For now, we have enrolled 4 patients among those of the cohort, although the third patient decided to interrupt the therapy at the very beginning, so his results won't be reported in here. The first patient is actually the one for which we saw the most and the strongest improvement. He was a 13 years old boy at the moment of the enrollment and presented with a quite mild or a mild moderate phenotype. An interesting finding is that the abdominal ultrasound that he performed during the time 0 assessment revealed a renal malformation that was previously unknown. And as for the psychological point of view, he had an emotional disorder and suffered from anxiety, which pretty much affected his daily life. So he has now completed the clinical trial and is on his second year of off-label treatment with perampanel, and has showed clear improvements, especially in terms of reduce anxiety and fears, and overall increase in his personal independence. So just to give you some very concrete examples, he's now started to take public transportations alone, or he could walk his dog alone, or he's living in the mountain and knows how to ski, but he has started since last winter to go skiing on his own. So all these very few achievements that could seem very small, but they're actually very meaningful for the patient and for his families. The second patient instead presented with a more severe phenotype clinically, but especially as regard the cognitive dysfunction. So first results were not so evident for her. And indeed, after 12 months of treatment at minimal dose of perampanel, with only mild improvements in her behavioral and adaptive levels, we decided to switch to 8 milligrams a day since last July. So in the next months, we will evaluate whether there's also dose-related improvement for her. And finally, patient 4 is now a 12 years old girl, also with a mild or a mild moderate phenotype. She was the last one who was enrolled in February 2024. So she has only undergone the evaluation of the 6 months, which, however, showed, well, we could see from those evaluations and the report that we periodically get from her parents, we could see improvement, especially in her anxiety level and in general in her socialization. So again, they reported that she has started going out with her friends alone and hanging out with her friends all alone since last summer. So of course we'll have to wait for the study to end, but preliminary data seem quite positive for her too. So I'm going to conclude with this overview of what emerged from our work. We collected 19 patients, affected patients, creating the first and to date the largest cohort of Italian White-Sutton syndrome patients, and aim to give an insight into the molecular and clinical aspects of the syndrome, with data that actually seemed quite in line with what has been reported in literature worldwide. Again, we confirm and we stress the importance of a global management of the patient at the moment of the diagnosis, also with instrumental examinations, and if it's the case, and among our patients that was the case, we stress the importance of nutritional support in order to avoid the obesity's consequences that could affect the patient health. On the other hand, well, the drug repositioning approach that we proposed in our clinical trial has been repeatedly demonstrated to be faster, cheaper, and safer for patients to find new treatment, and could be the winning strategy, especially for rare diseases. And well, speaking of rare diseases, our clinical trial presents the limitations of working on studying a rare condition as White-Sutton syndrome, meaning a small number of cases and heterogeneity of manifestations, especially in terms of what we are studying, so the behavioral aspects. However, the very first results may suggest the implication of perampanel in improving social symptoms of the White-Sutton syndrome. So as said, we consider our work to be at a very initial stage. So what do we hope to see in the future? Of course, we aim to increase the number of patients that are included in the cohort in order to deepen our study on the clinical and molecular aspects, but also to increase the significance of our genotype-phenotype correlation study. And we hope to implement a number of cases in the clinical trial, both at an Italian and European level. And in these terms, we already have identified a few new subjects that are about to start with a trial. And finally, and this is a quite exciting evolution for our study, I think for many of us, by starting a comparison study on the molecular pathway and on the phenotypical aspects of White-Sutton syndrome and CHAMP1 related disorder, we aim to implement our knowledge on these two very similar diseases, and hopefully also in terms of therapeutic outcomes. So I really hope we can meet each other in the next conferences with updated data. With that, I really want to thank all my colleagues at Burlo Garofalo, starting with my professor, Prof. Paolo Gasparini, but also all the other doctor and researcher who participated in the study, the patient family, and of course, you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Okay, coming with the question.
Is it possible for patients in the US to enroll in this clinical trial?
No, for the moment, no, because we have very different bureaucracy path. So at the moment, it's only about, it only started at a European level. Yeah.
Let me add, unless you start bugging someone in the US having the same trial, so push for it.
My son just recently started taking that. He has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and apparently they studied it with the LGS community and found out it was very responsive to the seizures and such. So he's on it. However, every time I increase his dose, it seems like the seizures get worse instead of better. I was told I had to get it up to a certain level for him to be able to titrate it and get it to stabilize. But as a mother, the worse the seizures are, the less I want to increase it. Did you guys see anything like that in your studies? Did you notice any kind of adverse reactions, or does it just really take time? Do I just need to trust the neurologist, or yeah. What's your advice on that, input on that?
Well, we're studying, we're not studying the seizure aspects of the syndrome. On the contrary, we're not study patients with epilepsy, since we're testing on an anti-epileptic medication for another purpose. But what we saw in few patients, well, the dropout and the second patient, we saw an increment of like psychoagitation, which was not so significant, but still, and it's reported to be one of the adverse effects of the drug.
So I have a daughter. So for the longest time, I thought she's been having seizures, but we just went to the neurologist just recently, and they couldn't find anything. But like when her last EEG came around, I told them like, well, I just saw her have an episode because she likes to zone out, and they kind of put it off as, well, maybe she has ADHD. So how do you so between like absence seizures and like ADHD, the zoning out, how do you differentiate between the two? Or have you seen that before?
No, actually, we excluded patients with clinical clonical seizure, but two of the patients that we'd included actually had EEG abnormalities. So we're considering the clinical aspects of the, like, clinically evident aspect of the seizures. Yeah.
Great talk. I had a question about the inherited variants and mutations. Are they clustering in a particular type? Are they point mutations versus deletions versus frame shifts, et cetera? Are they milder presentation clinically?
Yeah, they're milder presentation. I don't remember the type of mutation right now. I have it on my laptop, so I can check later. Yeah, they definitely milder presentation. But this will be, we only managed to include one whole family in the cohort, but this will be surely a very interesting future perspective also to study the other parents of the patient who inherited the syndrome, also to study penetrance or expressivity of the symptoms, so the syndrome, as well as genotype-phenotype correlation studies. So that will be, of course, one of the future perspective.
I assume the parent, the carrier, does not have a diagnosed
yeah, they got the
disorder.
diagnosis from the intrio-West analysis. And they, in two cases, I know about two cases, they actually showed a milder phenotype, especially with behavioral phenotype, with like aggressive behavior or anxiety, and just a borderline or a very mild intellectual disability.
Hi, my name is Emma, and I have White-Sutton syndrome. And my struggles at work is I get weak sometimes. When I'm picking up like a heavy box, sometimes I go weak out of the blue. And I don't know why I get weak like that.
Could it be because of hypotonia maybe, or yeah, could that be? Thank you.
Hi, did you or anybody else apply for orphan drug status in Europe?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question right now. I can check that too later. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, so thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you.